Illegal immigration in the United States is a very hot-button topic, even going so far as to prompt President Trump's much-delayed plans to build a wall that separates the United States from Mexico via the southern border. While the overall effectiveness of a wall is in question, data shows that illegal immigration has decreased by 1 million over the last 12 years, though an exact figure of how many people cross the border illegally each year can be difficult to ascertain, especially with reputable sources. Every year, though, 1 million legal immigrants enter the United States, and of the 45 million people who have entered the U.S. in the last decade as temporary visitors, 1.17% of them have overstayed their visas. For people who cross the border illegally, though, just how do they get here? And what are some of the craziest ways people have attempted to cross the border and start a new life in the U.S.? For any illegal immigrant, crossing the border can be a daunting affair. Typically, the only real hope for crossing the southern American border is to do it through the vast and remote wilderness stretches, as civilized areas feature strong fences with various anti-climbing features. The presence of law enforcement in the form of local police and border patrol agents can also make attempting to cross the border illegally in a city very risky indeed, and typically not worth the effort. This leaves would-be illegal immigrants with crossing the border being the safest bet, at least safe in terms of not being caught by law enforcement. Large swaths of terrain exist where on both the Mexican and American sides there's nothing but wilderness and little to no fencing to deter border crossers. Historically, illegal immigration was not seen as a serious enough issue to warrant policing those remote stretches of desert, and the inhospitable terrain itself was often a difficult enough challenge to deter an attempt to cross. Illegal immigrants here face dangerous animals in the form of snakes, poisonous spiders, and even roving coyotes, as well as blistering temperatures in the daytime and freezing cold at night. Usually immigrants have no land navigation training and only know the general direction of where civilization exists. This means that many get lost in an attempt to make their way to a town or city, and the U.S. Border Patrol regularly rescues hundreds of individuals on the brink of death from the wilderness. So, what are some ways that people have attempted to cross the border illegally? Junk in the trunk. In 2015, U.S. border enforcement agents in Arizona stopped two different cars for inspection. At one checkpoint, the agents discovered a man and a wounded female locked inside the car's trunk. And given that Arizona was at the time experiencing a major heat wave, the attempt was almost deadly for the two. A few miles away, another car was stopped for inspection, but the driver put the pedal to the metal and ran into a spike strip, which blew one of the car's tires. The driver fled into the wilderness, but agents found two other men locked inside the trunk of his car as well. Hitching a ride in a car trunk may not seem like a crazy way to try to cross the border, but given the extreme heat in the southern desert states like Arizona, let alone the fact that the heat wave was occurring at the time, it can be a deadly way to try to cross the border. Shockingly, the attempt was nothing new, and earlier in the year, Border Patrol agents discovered children being smuggled in this same way. Can't beat 'em? Join 'em. In 2015, Border Patrol agents were on routine patrol in Laredo, Texas, when they drove past another Border Patrol vehicle. At first, neither of the two agents thought much of it, but given that they knew their patrol area pretty well, the driver later said that something about the vehicle just didn't seem quite right to him. Turning around and following the other Border Patrol vehicle, the real agents finally pulled over the fake vehicle and discovered it was stuffed to maximum capacity with 12 immigrants. Naturally, the driver was arrested and the immigrants detained, with Border Patrol investigating where the vehicle came from and how it was made to look so much like the real thing. Getting to America, Evel Knievel style. Jumping a border fence is nothing new. You've probably jumped plenty of fences in your teenage years. But what do you do when you need to transport hundreds of pounds of drugs over a border fence? Well, you could try to jump the fence one by one with your best friends, trying to sneak your drugs into the US individually, or you could say screw it and take a page out of professional stuntman Evel Knievel's book and build a ramp to jump the border fence with your custom-made Jeep Cherokee. That's exactly what 11 individuals attempted to do earlier this year in February, when border agents discovered vehicle tracks in a protected wildlife sanctuary along the border. They requested a helicopter to help them search for the vehicle, and soon enough the chopper found a desert camouflage Jeep Cherokee racing back toward the southern border after being discovered. With the helicopter in hot pursuit, the driver of the Jeep floored it and made straight for a makeshift ramp that had been erected over the border fence, apparently hoping to jump the fence, and likely the same way he had gotten over it earlier. This time though, the Jeep got stuck and 11 men were forced to flee into the Mexican wilderness on foot as the Mexican army was called in to track them down. Interestingly, the Jeep had been completely modified, not just with desert camel paint job, but it had most of its body removed so as to lower its weight. Even the windows had to be taken out. Only a plexiglass windscreen protected the driver, and the occupants were forced to hang on to pipes that had been added to the vehicle to act as a sort of roll cage after most of the body was removed. This wasn't even the first time that this sort of incident happened, and incredibly it seems that smugglers attempting to enter the US illegally routinely attempt to do so by climbing over the fence with their vehicles. In 2012, another Jeep Cherokee, this time completely unmodified, was discovered teetering on a 14-foot-tall border fence after the vehicle had gotten stuck at the top. Apparently, the smugglers had used homemade ramps to get the vehicle to the top, then dropped 2 ramps for it to make its way down the other side. However, they hadn't counted on the fact that the vehicle didn't have the break-over angle necessary to clear the fence itself, leaving the body of the vehicle unable to clear the top. The smugglers left the scene and US law enforcement got a free vehicle to auction off. Why go over if you can go under? Understandably, most drug smugglers or illegal immigrants aren't keen on trying to stunt jump their way across a 14-foot-tall border fence like they were the star act at a monster truck show. For those wishing to travel in relative comfort across the border, the solution is simple. Don't go over, just go under. In 2010, law enforcement discovered a 600-yard tunnel that ran under the US-Mexico border. The tunnel began in a warehouse in Tijuana and ended in a warehouse in San Diego, with the entrances cleverly concealed inside a bathroom sink. Agents investigating the tunnel were amazed to discover that the tunnel was fitted out with lighting and ventilation systems, as well as a working rail system to quickly zip along. Quite a hefty investment of both time and money, but given the whopping 30 tons of marijuana that were discovered inside it, it's clear that its construction was worth it to whoever built it. Yet 125 tunnels have been discovered since the 1990s, and law enforcement is confident many more exist but are still undetected. While the Border Patrol operates a sophisticated tunnel task force that uses ground-penetrating radar, the border is so vast that it's all but impossible to find most of these tunnels. Fly like an eagle. Drug smugglers have been using aircraft since aircraft were invented really, but regular airplanes are too easily detected and are forced to file official flight paths and travel itineraries with the US government. Failure to do so can lead to you getting intercepted by the US Air Force or simply having law enforcement waiting for you when you land. 2 things that drug smugglers are notorious for not wanting to happen. In recent years though, smugglers have gotten around these 2 little problems by instead flying ultralights, tiny aircraft that aren't much more than a single engine, a prop, and glider-like wings. While they can only carry a few hundred pounds of drugs at a time, they're flown at night with the aid of night vision goggles and have their wings painted black. Their low altitude makes them all but impossible to spot on radar, and their quick speed can make them difficult to track and follow with ground vehicles, even if spotted. In just 2011, law enforcement reported 228 incursions by aircraft across the border, and they were just the ones actually detected, leaving the real number of ultralights being flown into the US a question. Beep beep, I'm a Jeep. Hiding in the trunk of a car is likely a pretty obvious and dangerous way to get caught. But what if you could become the car? That's exactly what hundreds of illegal immigrants try to do every year. Border Patrol agents routinely discover individuals who have attempted to hide within the actual vehicle itself, as in the bits and pieces of it. One man attempted to camouflage himself as a chair, having himself sewn in completely into the frame of the car chair. Despite looking like an obviously lumpy chair to even the most casual of observers, the man honestly believed the attempt would work. It didn't. Yet 2 other immigrants were discovered in the actual engine compartment of a van. Yes, laying right on top of the engine itself. One man lay with his head to the left facing up, while the other lay with his head to the right facing down, both of them neatly fitting into the engine compartment like a very weird Lego puzzle. Another immigrant was discovered sewn into the back seat of a vehicle, though at least his hiding spot was a lot less obvious than trying to be made to look like a chair itself. Another stopped vehicle revealed a woman who had actually been hidden inside the dashboard of the vehicle itself, somehow incredibly stuffing herself into just a few inches of breathing room. 2 men were also discovered stuffed into the floor of a car with a carpeted panel sealed above their heads. Being sewn into a car seat or stuffed into a tiny compartment may sound ridiculous, and admittedly, when you see the image of the man who tried to pass himself off as a seat, it really does look ridiculous. But it's also very dangerous. The temperatures at the US-Mexico border are typically well over 100 degrees, and being confined in such tight spaces, or being sewn into non-breathable upholstery can be a death sentence. Indeed, every year, tragically, the U.S. Border Patrol discovers dozens of dead immigrants, both from being stuffed into unsafe compartments or from attempts to cross the vast southern deserts and the dangerous Rio Grande on foot. If you had to illegally cross the U.S. border, how would you do it? Would you ever be desperate enough to try? Let us know in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more great content.